So, ladies and gentlemen, I do believe we're live. Although, let me just check. Yeah, everything seems to be good. This is the studio view right now. So back to the regular. Anyway, oh, I switched it back. See, that's why I need it. You're waving to a camera that no one's looking at right now.
That's fine. Story of my life.
All right.
Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, no one's here right now, but I'm sure they were shot up in droves. Dave, what are we talking about today?
All right, so I decided to ask my students who are juniors what topics they would like to hear about, and I put out a survey, and there was a number of different topics showing you like the different areas that they're interested in, and we had to select one, so we wound up choosing life after high school, the concept of what it's like, the transition from high school to college, and then kind of maybe address some of the anxieties that students have when they graduate high school, and then also the idea of, adapting to college or just life itself, the workplace and things like that. So anything I guess we could touch on from, and maybe they'll be putting in some questions or different topics in the chat that we can kind of drive home based on their interests. But I think if we just in general talk about the idea of just what do we think about the transition to college, and what do we think as far as our good attributes to kind of be prepared with when making that transition or that jump.
Well, maybe what was each of our process of leaving high school or getting ready to leave high school and then going into college? What was our mindset? And then what was reality for us?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
You want to start?
I should have a podcast. So, all right, let's put the camera on me. I never do this, but since we got 11 viewers, welcome everyone. So for myself, I actually fumbled very much like yourself, as I know from past stories. I very much stumbled through high school and, didn't really have any focus. I did not think about the future at all. And it's still kind of a big part of my life today. I don't think too much about it, I just, I know what I'd like to do and I work towards it. But it's not this constant weighing. And it's ironic I'm saying it because we just had a bit of a conversation about all the stuff that actually is weighing.
Yeah.
About the future and plans and what have you. But yeah, in high school, it was not a consideration. I've said before, I was walking on the landing at the top where I used to live with my parents, and Mum was doing her hair in the mirror, and she looked up and said, "Would you like to go to college? There's this art thing at the local college." So I thought to myself, you know what? Yeah, sounds good. That was it. I walked on, got dressed, and next thing you know, I went to college. But it was really that simple for me. And I think for myself, looking back, I was always in motion.
Right.
I was always on to the next thing. I was always working on, and I didn't realize I was becoming better in these skills. I was developing those skills and I was growing as an individual. I didn't realize it. I just knew that I went to college. I ended up with some work experience. I ended up being employed by the printer. I ended up becoming an apprentice printer. And then all my graphics and my design skills kind of came in from there. And, years later, now I'm a teacher. So who would have thought that? If I would have thought about it, and this is one thing I do tell my students, is because you never know where life is going to take you. If I had my degree right now, I might be earning a good solid $10,000 to $15,000 a year more than I currently am. I'm very happy. Life isn't all about money. It kind of is as well. But for me, it's not. If I wasn't getting paid and we didn't need money, I'd still would love to go into school and do what I do, interact with my students and help change maybe the course of a few lives. But I had no clue when I was in high school that that's where I was going to end up.
I think something I heard that you said in there was the idea of you were always in motion.
Mm-hmm.
So would you subscribe to like just the idea that one thing led to another, and you had that like slow process of, I'm going to just take the first step and then I'm going to go from there?
Some of the best advice I think we can ever give a student in high school is, all right, and one of the toughest, worst questions a student can be asked, two sides to that, is what do you want to do when you leave school? What do you want to do when you grow up? Yeah. And no one truly knows, because we have to learn who we are as an individual, what floats our boat, what's our passion, what is it that we could do for 8 hours a day. And for some of us, it's not doing that thing for 8 hours a day. It might be starting our own little business, which is 15 or 16 hours a day, but we're more happy doing that. So,
but really quickly, I feel like asking the question, I know that people hate that question, but I feel like it's also necessary, because if they've never thought about it, then how are you supposed to develop the mindset to figure out what it is that you actually want, right? And it's like, even when my kids come to my office and I'm like, you're a sophomore, like, what are we thinking? Is there anything that interests you enough that you could say that you want to do it for a really long period of time?
And that's the other side of the question, that it is good to ask, because it gets the wheels turning, and it just might spark something. So, but the best advice, which I didn't say, was we really need to have our students try as many different things as they can. Even if when they leave school, they just try different careers, different job paths, career paths, and just to see, all right, I might not enjoy, for example, I teach graphic design. I might not like graphic design, but I love the business aspect of it. And the graphic design are the skills that I know that helps me interact with the people, which is where the passion is at. So a lot of my students actually end up going to college and learning business, as that's just a solid adjunct to their graphic design skills. So it's dip your toes in all those waters and see what you like. But it's tough for a student to know what they want.
But just really quickly, like, speaking to that, that's the one, like, the nice thing about our school is that the kids come in, and even though we have this idea that when they're coming in as freshmen, they don't know what they want to do and they're picking what they need to do for the next 4 years, even the kids that are like, I really hate my CTE area, I don't want to be there. I'm like, but you're going to have this skill no matter what. You're gaining all this information and all these things that you may end up wanting to use at some other point in your life, because you don't know how you're going to change. You don't know what you're going to want in the future. So you have one more thing in your back pocket that you can hold on to, and you may be able to use it later. And it's like, I keep trying to explain to them, like, that can be anything in your life. And that's like, even from being an athlete, think about the different characteristics and different skills that you learn just from being on a team and working with other people, and learning how to have that camaraderie, and learning how to, like, piggyback off of each other and build things, right? So it's like, everything that you're doing, you're preparing for life after, as long as you're actually applying those skills and making them applicable moving forward.
Right. Yeah, you're adding to that toolbox of I can do this, I can do that. And the number of students, I'm never going to do graphic design. I was not always the teacher, believe it or not. I was not always the teacher that I am today. I used to be, I didn't know, we weren't necessarily taught how to handle our egos, how to handle students with issues. And a teacher with an ego and a student with an issue, sometimes that creates a bit of a... So I've come a long way myself over the years in the way that I handle individuals and situations, and what I allow ruffle my feathers. But it's this is one of those situations when I talk and I completely lose the...
It's okay. We can jump over while you regain yourself here.
No, that's right.
We can jump over. No, you're actually
next.
Why do we have to go in this circular motion?
No, we're going. Alima's next. Go ahead.
All right, I guess I'll go next. No, so for me, I guess it was, I always knew that I wanted to go to college. It was like, I knew I wanted to help. I didn't know exactly exactly what that would look like. But in being a people person and growing up and seeing how I always wanted to help people, I knew that was a part of what I wanted to do. My family, they were always very supportive as far as like, whatever you decide is what you decide, but we're not doing it for you. You have to pick. And I think that even with some of our students now, they're looking for someone to give them the answer to what they are supposed to do. And it's like, that's something that you have to figure out for yourself. And even if you have family members that are pushing it on you and saying that you should be a doctor, you should be this, you really have to assess what your passions are, because if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to love it, you're not going to enjoy it, and it's going to wear you down in the future, right? So again, I went to college. I decided to go a little bit far away from home. I know that's a thing that a lot of our kids think about. They're like, do I stay close to home because my family's here? Do I go away? Right? Sometimes you got to get away to figure out who you are. And I feel like that was when I really came into myself, and I figured out a little bit more about myself and freedom, managing money, which again, in high school, you're not really thinking about being mindful of money. And after
A lot
high
of students
school,
are now, though. I'm telling you,
after high school, you have to, they're mindful of it right
very
now.
mindful. They want to learn more about that.
Yeah.
They're worried about that. So I told them I'll touch on it in class, but I think
That's
that's
a big thing. And I feel like that's something that they really fear. Like after high school, like that's something that they're going to have to focus on. And it's like, yeah, you are.
Right.
Right?
Amira says, so true. And preach, Alima, preach, Alima.
Hey, Amira.
So, yeah, what about yourself, Dave? What was the process like for you?
Well, I think I mentioned on previous podcasts, but the whole idea for me in high school was that I was very like in the moment. I was just like, I loved high school. I played sports. I had a big group of friends. I lived right across the street from the school. So it was like always like a hot spot at my house, like people going home, like there was just lines of cars and we would just be outside or whatever.
It's fun.
So it was just a very like social time, and I was kind of hesitant and reluctant to kind of think too far ahead. I just wanted to be like in that moment. So I put very weak effort into looking into schools. I only applied to 2 colleges, and I picked the one that my brother went to just because my brother went there. Yeah, it was like whatever. But also I thought that I was originally going to do something with like broadcasting. Interestingly enough, here we are at a podcast, but I also had always thought about being an English teacher. So I said, I only applied to 2 schools, and one was Seton Hall. And if I went to Seton Hall, I would have done broadcasting. And then if I went to the school I went to, which is Moravian College in Bethlehem, PA, I was going to be an English teacher because I didn't have communications. So I really like wound up not with a lot of options. So when I went to Moravian, because it was a little bit cheaper, because my brother went there, it was like more money off. And I wound up just going there without giving it much thought. It was only about 40 minutes away from where I lived at the time. And then I just, again, it was like one day at a time. I just always had in my head, I'm here to be an English teacher. I kind of rolled the dice on it, hoping that would work and hoping that I would like it. And it worked out that once I actually got into the classroom to start student teaching, which is literally the last thing you do before you graduate, like it's your senior semester, your spring of the senior semester, when I'm about to graduate, I went into the classroom and I just loved it. I was like, this is definitely for me. And not only was it just the classroom, but it was also the students I was serving were students who needed teachers who were dedicated, so that's what drove me from there. I went to Patterson, and Patterson I went to Tech. So it wound up working out. But again, it's very much for me, and that's what I was trying to pick up with Andrew, was the idea of like that, just take the steps. Like what happens, I think, is too often that students might think of like, I need to be here at this point. And I've always felt like when you do that, when you give yourself a deadline of where you need to be at a certain point in your life, like I was like that when I was in high school. I always said, growing up watching Boy Meets World, where's my Topanga? I need to be, who's going to be my high school sweetheart? College, I'm going to meet her in college then. I'm going to get married right after college, and then, you start putting I'm going to be married. But what happened was, once I was I think it was a junior in college, I went to a kid's house, and his brother said, look, don't even think about getting married till you're 27. And once he said that, it was like this, and I didn't even know this guy.
A weight was lifted.
Yes, exactly. It was like,
yeah.
I said, I said, I have now 7 years not to worry about it. and that's what I was. I was 20 years old. I'm just like, I thought I had to have this thing nailed down by the time I'm like 22. And I'm sitting there going, I haven't even met her yet. I don't know her. Like all these things.
How old were you when that happened?
When I met that kid that just said that?
Yeah.
I was about 19 or 20.
So when I was about 24, 25, I was concerned about exactly the same thing. And I think most people would say that it's women that worry about such things, right? Oh, I'm
biological
gonna
clock?
get married, need to have a child.
Yeah.
I was concerned that I'd have plenty of girlfriends, but not a serious relation. but not a serious relationship.
Playa.
So
Yeah, but I think that the idea though is that I had this kind of hazy image of my future in my head of like, yeah, I'm going to be a teacher and I want to coach. And like, that was the basically, and I've said this before, that was the deal. When I got to the point where I actually sat down as a senior and I thought about picking a college, I said, I have to do it now. Like it was like the 11th hour. I have to make a decision. It came down to the idea of what life do I want to have? Not what career, it was what life. And when I thought about what my life, the whole 360-degree look of my life as a broadcaster, if I went that direction, it would have been very time consuming, a lot of travel, and not conducive to family life, in my opinion, the way I looked at it. So when I thought about that, I said, teaching as my other option, I can still coach, I can still have a lot of time with my family. I'll be off the same time my kids are off. Like I wanted to be a good dad too, right? Like that was like a big part of it too. Like I wanted to be around for my kids, coach their teams, all that kind of stuff. So that helped make my decision.
yeah.
And I never looked back about it because I was like, and now that I am married with kids, it all like falls into place. So as I was, perfecting my craft in my 20s and figuring out like how to teach and all that kind of stuff, then getting married in my 30s and having kids in my 30s, like it all will happen when it happens. There's not one size fit all. There's not anything that has to be done at a certain time. But when you take the steps, and even the first step of going to a college, regardless of where you go, you'll wind up seeing the next step just create itself for you.
You're
Right?
getting
Like,
all the compliments over
Exactly.
here, by the way.
Yeah, I
you
gotta
can't,
have to
you
catch
can't
up.
read them, but I can read them.
So Amira says, and thank God you chose that path. Hashtag the best English teacher.
Oh, here we go.
Hashtag where Dave belongs. And he's the best dad. All your students are going,
yeah, exactly. They're all signing off.
oh, that's nice.
But I think the idea though for me was always about, being open to having those other steps present themselves.
Yeah.
And then saying, okay, even though I'm on this path going this way, oh, something just opened up over here.
Let me go try.
Yeah,
it.
I'm going to see what's going on. What's this door open?
But that sounds like a good recommendation for them. You're saying like don't have blinders on. Like
Right.
you can't just have blinders on and looking ahead. You have to see what presents itself
Right.
as you go along your path and figure out what you can walk into that may be a better opportunity.
Yeah.
And I
Flexibility.
think one of the being flexible, being
Yeah.
able to adjust and adapt. And I think that one of the other things that you brought up were relationships, right? And I think that that's something that our kids kind of fear or don't know what to think about after high school. Like they have all these friends right now in high school. And what does that look like when they're not in the same place? And how did that work for you? I'm actually curious because I'm sure some of them are thinking about the relationship aspect as far as friends.
Not only did I leave high school and kind of move on, but I left the country. So I left April 7th, 1992. And I think it was maybe whenever, I don't know, I'd have to go back and see when I joined Facebook. And even then, maybe a good 10 years after that I got back in touch with some of my old school friends. So I left everything, and I might as well have been Robinson Crusoe, in that, and I felt like it as well, the loneliness, the isolation, and just kind of really just living through some horrendous situations before ultimately selling absolutely every single thing that I owned, everything. I just had a few clothes and my van, and I moved into my van on purpose, and I did it for a while, and I slept in businesses and their couches who would let me, and I paid off my credit cards when I did that. That's when I met my wife. That's when I realized that she actually did love me, because she saw this guy. Instead of doing laundry, I go to Walmart and just buy a new shirt. So that was...
Keep the tag on it.
But she tells me she fell in love with my patience, which is something that I do have. So I'm sure there's other things as well that she liked about me. I'll ask her. But no, so it was just, I really did, like, I'm the absolute opposite end of the spectrum. I let life happen to me.
Right.
I let life happen to me, and which is a big thing. And really, and I lived in the moment, reacting to life every single moment. And sometimes it was in anger, and sometimes it was out of sadness. But it made me who I am today, and I'm doing this because of the life I've lived. This mellow thing, and the social and emotional podcast and what have you. But I still find it hard to relate to some of the students that are out there going through things, as I've said before. It's just, we are all so different. And my life has been a blessing. Even though I've gone through some crazy stuff, it's truly been a blessing, because I look at where I'm at, I look at what I have, and, it's just, it can work out. It more than likely won't work out if you sit around and wait for someone to look after you, for someone to fix it, for someone to, oh, you'll be okay. Maybe it won't unless you take action. But it's not hard action. It's just maybe ask 10 people before you get accepted for a job. Maybe ask 20 or 30 people. But it doesn't mean, ask 2 or 3 people, then give up.
Right.
But that's what after school will teach you. I think it gives you, I actually need to do stuff now.
Yeah.
That food isn't necessary for some of us. That food isn't necessarily going to magically appear because mum's home, or whatever the situation is. Because I know not every student is lucky enough to have parents.
Well, also, I'm going to touch on that, and then I'm going to go back to the original question about the relationships. But I think it's also a matter of understanding that it's all a part of the process. The idea of hitting rock bottom, or having trials and tribulations, and not having everything maybe when you want it, right, is all a part of what makes the grass greener on the other side. It's all that makes life better when you achieve what you set out to achieve, because you went through the trials and tribulations. If it came easy, you wouldn't appreciate it as much. So when you go through a difficult time in high school, when you transition to college, and maybe that's a stressful and difficult time for you socially and emotionally and academically, or when you transition even into having a difficult time getting into a career, and you see other people getting married, having children, established, buy their first house, and you're sitting there going, what the hell? What am I waiting? Like, you might start getting that,
that deadline, those timelines.
And even start looking at, like, trying to keep up with the Joneses, but it's also more a matter of understanding that, when my time comes, it's gonna matter so much more to me because of that. I was actually thinking on the way here about the idea of even like when people get their first car, right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants a certain car. They have like their dream car. But should that be your first car, right? What if you get your dream car first, right? We all would want to have our dream car first, but the likelihood of getting that as your first car.
Then what do you look forward to after that?
Exactly. And you never appreciate it as much, because when you go around, my first car was like my grandmother's old. It was like
a hoopty.
It wasn't. I wouldn't call it a hoopty, but it was like a pinkish, purplish kind of, depending on how the light hit it. One time I rolled down the window. It was automatic windows, but I rolled it down to go pay a toll going into my school in Pennsylvania, and it wouldn't go up, and it was freezing out, and I was like, I got to get the bag over it now, like, and you just have to adapt, and then it's make a clicking sound, so you have these experiences, things breaks down, whatever, but then you learn how to have a sense of humility. Like, yeah, that's my car. Like, I'm picking up a girl to go on a date. Like, yep, I'm going to turn the radio up so they don't hear that clicking and whatever. And I'm going to like jam my finger.
And then
like
when you can buy your own car, you appreciate it so much more.
And that's what I did. So I had a couple of, crappier cars and it was something at the time I was like, this is kind of embarrassing. I didn't enjoy having it, but I just said, I'm glad. Looking back, I always say, I'm so glad I had those cars to start with.
Yeah.
But again, you don't realize when you're in it. Like, a lot of times I think the students and teens just in general need to understand that a lot of the things they're going through now that they might not like about their lives or are worried about not being perfect are things that when you finally find that place of peace in your life, you're going to look back and say, like, I remember that, and now I'm so much, it made me even happier to be where I am and more appreciative of this career, or the opportunities that I was given, or where I am with my family, or whoever these people are in my life, or whatever it is. It's all a part of the process. So it's not isolating things. It's just kind of looking at it as more of a linear, and it's one thing building on the next.
But I think that that's a skill like that we all need, the ability to reflect, right?
Yeah.
The ability to look back on where you're coming from, what you experienced, and how you grew from it. And I feel like that's something that we don't often take the time to do, to reflect on the past and see how far we've come. We're so busy looking forward to try to figure out where we're going and where
Right.
we need to be, so to speak, you know?
Is actually, I would argue that introspection is possibly the biggest skill and the biggest thing that you can do for yourself, as long as you're not talking around in circles, as long as you're kind of analyzing. When I got divorced for the second time, I sat on the bed for months and months and months after work. I would come home from work and I'd sit on the bed in pure silence. And it's actually where I actually stumbled upon meditation. Never really thought about it, but things started to happen in the quietness. And I slowly come to realizations that I wasn't perfect, but I did everything that I could in the version of me that I was at the time. And there was a therapy in kind of letting go, in knowing that, you know what, I did what I could,
Yeah.
and having that introspection. So even again, when you leave school, just to, if you're going through tough times, to be able to give yourself those moments and just reflect, think about it. Don't argue and be belligerent just to, kind of have your way and be right, but think, did I mess up? Is there something that I could be doing better, or a way to be better? And like Dave said, and Alima said, there's having humility and looking at yourself in a different light and being honest with yourself can make a world of difference.
Just to take a quick pause before we get back to the relationship thing. Anyone who's out there, because we do have quite a few viewers right now.
33. Thank
which
you
is
very much
amazing.
indeed.
Thank
All
you
right,
for tuning
kiddos.
in. But we would love for you to participate in this so that we can
what
answer any of
specific-
your
yeah.
questions.
Yeah,
So
what
anything that
specific
you'd like
areas you
us
wanna talk
to
about?
touch on, anything that you want to ask questions about, you'd like us to kind of go over, please go ahead and put something in the chat so that we can address it.
Yeah, if Amira's still on, she's a college student right now. You could even get feedback from a college student of who's actually in it right now. So you could also, maybe she could add some insights into things from a more present day approach. But I think, we talk about humility, and I wrote down, and I thought about this earlier, about attributes to have moving into college or the real world kind of idea, is confidence and humility. They're not exclusive, right? You could have them combined. You could have the sense of confidence, but also understand, like, I'm not perfect, and that's okay too. Like, and reflect on, how could I have made something better, or what might be my fault, or how can I improve at the same time, but still carry yourself with a level of confidence so that people understand, like, yeah, I'm smart, even if I don't have those grades. Like, I knew in my college classes that I was probably one of the ones in all my classes who had one of the lower grades. But I never thought of myself as the dumbest kid in class.
Not as less.
I was always like, yeah, I'll keep up with them. I'll challenge myself. I don't apply myself as them, but I'm not dumber than them.
Yeah.
Like, and I also felt like the things that they were focusing on academically, they were better than me academically, but I also knew that my life experiences were far surpassing theirs. So when I would come into a class after a weekend being out and partying and whatever, and visiting other schools and whatever, I remember one weekend I got jumped on my campus. I got my butt kicked by a couple of kids that were like hiding behind this thing, and they like sucker punched me. They dragged me through a parking lot, and I got all beat up. And I come into class on Monday with this big road rash on my face, and like I had a black eye, and I just walk into class, and it was mostly girls in there, and there was a lot of kids that were like not really, you would never see out. And they're like, "What the hell happened to you?" And I'm like, I got jumped this fast. I'm like, "Where?" I'm like, "Oh, behind the gym over there." They're like, "On this campus, something like that could happen." I'm like, "Yeah,
That could happen anywhere.
I'm like, exactly. So I was like, whatever. They just were so shielded, and they talk about like humility. I was like, yeah, I got beat up. It's like, whatever. It's like, it's a Monday, it's like, so you just kind of go through life, and you just have these experiences, and you realize, there's things that happen that are terrible things that happen in people's lives. There's things that are great things that happen, and all kind of, works itself out in the long game. So what sometimes you might look at a kid in college and be like, oh, they have everything going for them. And then you realize that, in 10 years from then, they don't have everything going for them, and you do.
Yeah.
And you might be sitting there spending all your time worrying, why aren't I like them? And I wish I had more like them. And you're like, no, when your time comes and you
That's
have
it.
your family and you have your kids and you have
That's it.
whatever, and you're sitting down around the kitchen table and you're just looking at everybody and you're just like, this is it. This is the moment. This
That's
is,
it.
and I'm this age. Like right now, I did that with my kids yesterday. I sat around the table. We were just eating dinner, and I just said, all right, everyone's going to say something nice about each other. I was like, all right, you start. And then I'm like, what do you like about Eva? And then my son's like, I think she's beautiful. And
Oh
I was
my
like,
God.
I was like, okay. I'm like, Mom, what do you think about you? What do you think about? So everyone went around, and it was just like, and then we always usually say too, when we're around, we just say like, what was your favorite part of the day? And it usually is like that moment. Like when it comes, like my wife and I were like, oh, this right now, this is that moment where like we're happiest because we're all together, and they all realize it. And it's just, that's not academic. That's what it is. And yeah, I'm 39, and I thought when I was in high school that would have happened when I was 24.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen when I was 24, but that didn't stop me from happening when when I'm 39.
So Grape OJ says, dang, Dave, that ain't right. And Nicole says, hi, how do you evaluate your shortcomings without beating yourself down? By the way, I'm Amira's friend. LOL.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Nicole.
So first,
Hi, Grape OJ.
the way that you even stated, how do you evaluate your shortcomings? As far as like if you fall short of something that you're setting out to do, is that what?
Or maybe there's a flaw in your character or an ability. Like, for example, I used to have very low self-confidence, and when I would speak to bosses in an interview type session, my head would like my head would shake uncontrollably, and I'd be there going, I don't know why this is happening.
So wait, Nicole, is that what you mean? Like shortcomings as far as
Like weaknesses?
Weaknesses or something you need to improve upon.
Like what would be an example of a shortcoming?
Yeah, if you could explain that. Because I feel like sometimes when like, even when, I don't know if it's what she's referencing, but they think about evaluating their shortcomings as far as their weaknesses, things that they can't do. And it's like, okay, if it's something that you need and something that you want to work towards, you just do what you have to do to try to make it better or try to get better at it. So I'm just curious as to
for me
what that means.
For me, shortcomings, yes, like weaknesses or mistakes.
Okay.
So for me, what's happened is it's being kind with yourself and realizing that you're not going to get things right a lot of the time or sometimes, and just being patient with yourself. And I've made a mistake and everyone's laughing and I'm like, it's okay.
Humility.
I just didn't know. I didn't know. It's as simple as that. And I messed up. Or it might be even, more innocent. But you just let it go. It'll come with time. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I've never really been too hard on myself with areas that I have not been great at. I just, you do have to really be patient with yourself and think about, if it's important to you, you'll work at it and you'll get better at it. But I think in the interim, while you're still figuring it out, you don't beat yourself up about it, because ultimately you say, all right, I'm going to get better. I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to take this as a moment, whether it was an embarrassing moment that you had or whether it was a sense of failure that you felt, and you just go. And I always have used, whether it's a defense mechanism, probably is or not, like sense of humor. Like it's not the end of the world, right? Like that moment, you don't view it as a failure. You view it as maybe a loss at that moment, and you're going to learn from it. Like, and a lot of times we learn more from our failures than anything else. Yeah. So having that feeling could be motivation to say, let me work on this skill. And if it's something that you can do on your own, go for it. If it's something that you need help on, like I knew when I first arrived at college, my first class I took was a writing course, and it was pop culture writing, and it was at 7:50 in the morning. And I had it 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. And I remember going in and I wrote my first paper with very little effort, just like I would have written something in high school. I get it back and it has an F on it. And the teacher's like, you can't write like that here. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of interesting. I can't, all right, that's going to be a problem then, right? That's my first grade I'm getting in college and it's an F. And I'm told like I can't write like that. Like write like what? Like what am I doing? What happened here?
Yeah.
And what happens is the teacher has office hours like once or twice a week. And I went to the office hours and I just said, look, like, what do you mean by this? And because I wasn't going to say it out loud in class, as a 18-year-old entering college, being like, hey, I got an F. What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Like I feel like an idiot. So I just said, all right, let me see what she's looking for. And then she said, listen, I'm glad you came to the right, during this office hours. I introduced myself. She knew my name at that point. She said, look, just try to do this, this, and this, pay more attention to that, eliminate some of this, all things I hadn't learned in high school, but was expected to do in college. And then she said, if you still have trouble with it, there's a writing center. Here's the information. This is when they're open. It's free. Take advantage of that. And I started to actually put more time and effort into it because that was something that came easy to me in high school, and I got A's on things with pretty little effort. And then in college, it just was a higher expectation. So you just have to, again, that's the flexibility, that's the humility, and it's also the motivation of saying, if you want to get better, you just do it. But you can't you can't look at it and just be like, oh my God, I'm doomed. Like I never had that moment of like, oh my God, I got an F, my life is over. I just said, oh, that's a wake up call. Again, that's all it was. Like you just have to look at it and say, how can I be better for this? Every single moment that I've had something difficult in my life, I've been pretty quick to turn the page and try to turn it into a positive. And I've had rock bottom moments in my life as well, like out of college, like where I really messed up and I had a lot of difficulty with like finances and social and all these different things like hit when I was around 22. And it was like a low point for me. But then what I did was from that, I said, I'm going to make that my low point. Right. It's not getting any lower. It's going to get better. And how can I make it better? And I just little by little, from a financial standpoint, I'm going to save X amount a week. From a personal standpoint, I'm going to go out and meet some new people. I'm going to try new things. I'm going to dedicate this amount. I'm going to start coaching. I'm going to start doing whatever it was. Like you just keep yourself moving and then you get back on your feet and you start to see the doors opening and
small things as well that the instructors, the teachers can do. So for example, in graphic design, I have some students that are staggeringly shy, terribly shy, and they don't want to speak up and they don't want to ask, and they'll come up to me to ask the class, so I think this is a band-aid we need to rip off and start presenting their work occasionally. So, just because it's going to help some of those areas where you feel like you have a weakness, and some do.
And Nicole, just know you can't be great at everything, but you can get better at those things that you want to get better at. Like that's what it comes down to, right? And I think that the hardest thing for us sometimes is to accept the fact that we can't be fantastic at everything, because you do have to try to apply yourself to certain things so that you can be great at them. So just be kinder to yourself, like give yourself some self-compassion, just you got it.
We're all human.
It's also the attitude you have about it as well. Like when you go into it with an attitude of humility and you kind of say like, look, I screwed up, and not a defensive posture. Like, who am I going to blame this on? Right. Then it becomes a bigger issue if like you do poorly and you make it seem like it's the teacher's fault. Right. Then they're not going to be likely to help you out on whatever it is. They're going to try to take you down a peg.
So I'll read these out of order. Grape OJ says, I feel like I'm called out right now. And Amira says, hey, the high schoolers watching, my name is Amira. I graduated a bit ago. Take it from me, these educators know what they are talking about. Please use your resources. There's so much to learn. So thank you. I'd like to think so.
Yeah. But that's another thing I think is important too. And I think one of the main things I would like to express to them, and please feel free, the students who are on there, to post more questions. Thank you, Nicole, for asking that question. Even that participating, right? Like there's a lot of you probably have a question right now.
Yeah.
And we have about 20 some minutes left. Like you could be the person that we address. Like obviously if there's 33, we're not going to get to all 33, but if you're one or two, then we'll get to you. So the idea of not burning bridges, a lot of people have sometimes, like this happened last year in my class. Sometimes people get that idea of like, I'm leaving college, I'm going to tell people how I feel, or I'm going to whatever, or I'm leaving this job and I'm going to just scorch the earth before I leave and whatever. There's people who do that, are very like spiteful, and they just kind of lash out about things, feeling like this is over, so therefore I'm done. And I even last year I had a student who, the students were in some kind of chat with each other in the class, and then one of the students is like, "Oh, I can't wait till we're about to graduate. I'm gonna rip Mr. Ritchie, blah blah blah," and one of the other students in class showed it to me, and I was like, "This is first of all, I don't care." So literally, one of the last, I'm like, "Hey, buddy, you got something to say? You want? Go ahead. Like, I'm right here. You got anybody want to rip me? You can rip me if you want."
Yeah.
But and of course, no one said anything. But I'm like, "You got no spine. Then you can say whatever you want. I don't care." But just the idea of like that's a burnt bridge. Right? Like,
Burnt bridges are a huge thing.
what are we doing? Like it's just a stupid thing because even when you realize like I've gone from one school to the next, I didn't burn the bridges of the school I was at. I didn't rip anybody out the door because when I got to tech, people were like, "Hey, I know people at that school. I know so and so," and I'm like, "Yeah," and you better watch yourself for what you say to people because you just don't know
You don't.
who other people know, and it doesn't benefit you.
And at the end of the day, as that old adage says, it's not really that you're giving any news or anything new about the individual you're complaining or talking about. It actually reveals everything about
Yeah,
you.
that's it.
You know, so it lets your character kind of shine, which burning bridges and being careful about what I do out in the world. I thought about that many a time. I've often caught myself being a bit of a jerk, in years past, long ago. And it just the thought that person could be a customer tomorrow.
Yeah.
That person might be a boss at a job interview next week. It's just all those corny things that you see in the videos that it actually happens.
Yeah.
Someone once said to me, "Yeah, I'm gonna take this, that, and the other from. I'm gonna steal this, steal that. Some small things. It doesn't matter. I'm never gonna go back there again." And I'm like,
Yeah.
what goes around comes around.
Yeah.
So Venus John says, what is something that you wish someone told you before or after you graduated high school?
Great question, Venus. Hi, Venus.
I tell all my students each year that, and not to knock schools in any way, shape, or form, but just to say that as long as you keep moving, as long as you take action, as long as you don't let things purposefully fall through the cracks, everyone could leave. Schools could shut down tomorrow, right? As long as we all keep moving forward and trying to better ourselves, we're all going to be okay. It's just that what school does for us is gives us a much better trajectory and possible outcome in life. Well said, Andrew. Jenna.
Hold on. What would you say with that? Because that's a very thought. I'm trying to think about that.
That someone told you before or after you graduated.
Or wish
high school.
somebody had said, I guess, too. Right?
Yeah.
See, for me, it was my lack of preparation in choosing a college did hurt me, but in the grand scheme of things, it worked out for the best.
Yeah.
So I would say, had I had more guidance or more interest in looking into the schools, I would have picked a school in New Jersey that was far cheaper than the school I went to, right? Because my school was probably around like 30 grand a year, which was completely unnecessary for me to become a teacher.
Yeah.
Plus, by going to a school in Pennsylvania, I got certified in Pennsylvania and not New Jersey. So when I moved back to New Jersey, they said, "You're not certified here."
That's a great one, by the way. So many students I know are going to colleges because someone else is going to the same college.
Yeah.
And all for what? Extra $30,000 a year
Right.
just to hang out with mates who they might fall out with anyway
Yeah.
and end up by themselves.
Yeah. So that for me was something at the time I was like, damn, like this, it didn't work out because I would have had to know ahead of time in college, which no one told me, but they don't care. They just want your money.
Yeah.
They would have said, by the way, make sure you apply to New Jersey while you're applying for Pennsylvania so that you get that
All comes
certification.
through. Yeah.
So that you can go, because every job offer that I was getting was all from Pennsylvania. And I'm like, I live an hour and a half away from there. I'm not commuting that far. And every job interview I went in New Jersey was all saying, you don't have your certificate. We can't hire you. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't because you're not certified in New Jersey. So I wound up going to a charter school as a result. But because I went to the charter school and I worked there is how I fell in love with working with kids in Patterson, and I started coaching there. And then I met my wife indirectly through there. So like it all works out. So I'm not like regretful now, but in hindsight, if I was better prepared with knowing that and looking into that, I wouldn't have picked a school that was in Pennsylvania, and I wouldn't have picked a private school that was more expensive.
Right.
My issue was I applied to 2 colleges, both of which were about 30
I
grand.
was going to say Seton Hall.
Yeah,
alone,
Seton Hall's
I'm
also
like,
expensive. So at the time, and those schools are way more expensive now than even when I went in 2000. So the point is, that's something to me that I should have realized that, and that's my message out there too. It doesn't really matter as much where you go. You have to think about where you go. How is that place going to set you up for maybe what the step is after that you think, like maybe where you want to live. Because if you do decide to go to a school like Seton Hall, for example, they're going to set you up with jobs maybe in the city or the northeastern part of New Jersey, right? Because that's where they're affiliated. You know, if you wind up going to a school in Michigan, their affiliates are going to be in Michigan. So if you plan on not staying there, you might have to realize, like, well, your scope of impact to helping me is in this area, but yet I'm not going to live in that area. So how do I apply that to New Jersey? Because when I came back to New Jersey and I was like, I went to Raven, like, where's that? That had literally no bearing on people hiring me. It meant nothing to them. Even though it's a very good school for education in Pennsylvania, they know it's good. Here they're like, where the hell's that? It meant literally zero to them where I went.
Yeah, I remember now. All right, so now I don't, because you were just talking.
So stupid.
No, I wish that someone would have said that you can be a good student and you can also go out and have fun and you can be an athlete. Like, don't just stick to doing all the educational stuff and being in your room. Like, go out, meet people, like different people that you never had a chance to like get to know. Like, go and figure out who you are amongst the people that you're around. Like, I wish somebody would have just said that, and then it didn't take me so long to kind of do it myself.
Especially while they're also going through it, right?
Yeah.
That makes it so much easier. When you're in college, like my freshman year in college, we're all sitting there like maybe acting like we're fine, but like we're all sitting there going like, I'm in a place sleeping in a room with somebody I just met, and I don't know what this person's all about, and I don't know what that person's across the hallway is all about, and whatever. But yet you're all kind of like, yeah, we're good. We're so happy to be here. Yet you're sitting there like brushing up against your pictures with your mom. You're like, oh my God.
But I think that's the biggest part about us, right? Is that we're human and we adapt quite well.
I see a lot of chatter in here.
Questions coming in. So it's Brittany. Let's see.
You didn't skip one, did you? You started to say Jenna.
Let's see. Jenna was talking about humility. I used to hate being embarrassed, but I've learned to laugh at myself, make a joke about it, and move on. It's kind of made me feel more free, if that makes any more sense.
It does make sense.
Exactly.
It does.
That's exactly. Just
wise beyond your years, Jenna.
Yeah, exactly. You are. Let's see. Amira, yeah, I agree with Jenna. We are human. Let's go down. We have it's Brittany says, what's the hardest part about transitioning from high school to adulthood? And then what kind of ties in is Amber Cancum. Hi, how do you feel about people still living with their parents at home after high school or college? Do you feel there is a need for independence from parents once they are adults? I know that some parents have a view on that. Some students have a view on that. Personally, while I was going to college initially, I was with my parents because I used to cycle to college, so it kind of made sense. I never had a job back then.
Yeah.
I
think that there's a couple layers to that. One is what works best for you and what your personality's like. I do think if you wind up living on campus, you do automatically find out you get more independence and you develop more of a sense of self and confidence because you're forced to do things that you might not have to do at home, and you have the freedom to be out without anyone checking on you, and you can go and do as you please. You figure out your laundry and your food, and you're like, hey, I can feed myself and take care of myself, and I'm still kicking here. I'm still figuring it out. I do find that when you go away to college, it's harder to come home, and live back home, but it's also not a bad idea to do if you have a long-term plan. So if you sit there and say, like, for what I did was I went, came back, and I lived home for a couple of years, then I moved out with my friends, then I bought a house. So like you wind up kind of having to find your own way, but as long as you have, those short-term and long-term goals of saying like, all right, what am I doing while I'm home? I think when somebody stays home and they go, I'm going to stay home for a couple of years, save some money, right? And then they buy a new car. Yeah. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
That's not helping you get out of the house. You're not going to live in that car. So then you say to yourself, well, okay, I'm going to save up to get an apartment. and you start making smart decisions financially, which we could talk about as a whole separate topic, but you start thinking about where you want to be and how you want to spend your money, and you start thinking like, hey, maybe I'll rent a place with several, like that's what I did. I lived in a house that we rented, and it wound up being $500 a person. There was five of us.
Same.
Five of my friends
Yeah.
from college. We rented a house in Parsippany, and we had a ridiculously good time. And it was like college, but as young adults who were going to work in the morning.
Yep.
And then it became like I'm the only one going to work every morning, and the other four didn't have jobs.
Yeah,
And I was like,
yeah.
can you stop partying on a Monday night when I'm going to teach and coach the next day? So then it became like, all right, I need to get my own place after that. So you go through and you develop. But I don't think to have a negative stigma about people who stay home is wrong.
Yeah.
Because it is right for some people, depending on what their goals are, to make money, to save money, if they have certain responsibilities at home, younger siblings.
But I think that that's the thing. Like, you have to assess your reason for staying home, and sometimes it's even the money factor.
Yes.
Like, if staying home for you is what makes most sense, then go for it. If you're staying home because that's what's most comfortable for you,
Right,
because
that's
you're
wrong.
afraid to go to school and you don't know the experience, so you're not doing it, that's not a reason to
Right.
stay home.
Right. And you can't go to college and then treat it like an extension of home where you don't go anywhere either. Because then it's like,
Correct.
now I'm spending money to dorm, but I don't do anything that I wouldn't be doing at home. So what's the
Right.
point? The whole point is to find out who you are, what
Right.
you're made of, all that kind of stuff. So I feel like I love that because, again, I'm surrounded with a bunch of other people who are also figuring it out.
Yeah.
A bunch of guys going down to the laundry being like, what do we do? And I'm like, all right, listen, everybody, we're going cold, because that's all I know. You just shove everything in there, you put cold, and you just do it. And then you just, you figure out little ways to make it work, and you get food and you're kind of figuring everything out, and you're all in it together, as opposed to like, I'm trying to figure it out while all these other people already have it figured
Right.
out because they already had these experiences, like what might happen if you stay home and then you go into the workplace and you're like, what do I do for lunch?
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, well, everyone's like, duh, we all order out. And you're like, well, how much is that? And
Right.
you start to feel like maybe a sense of awkwardness, as opposed to like, look, we went through all this. I'm confident. I went through these things. I figured it all out in college.
I never had that typical college experience because I got like work experience. Then I became an apprentice. I left college, and I ended up moving out of home and into some like financially assisted living back then by the government, the local government. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I basically had no job. I was getting paid unemployment for a year or so. I moved in with my training partner because back then I was a bodybuilder, and that's what we did. Me and my mate, we would work out, and we go to the gym in the morning and work out, and then kind of lazy around all day. Once called Arnold Schwarzenegger from the apartment. Well, actually, we called Flex Magazine thing because we saw
You gotta
his name in-
refocus. There's so many questions coming in. They all waited until the very
This is
end.
typical.
Yeah.
You know what? That's fine.
8:51. But yeah, so
Schwarzenegger over here.
but having that experience, going into not having that college and that college dorm experience, and then I was able to do that at the age of like 18 or 19. So even though the ages sound all weird because in England it was just all different, but yeah, I didn't have a typical.
But another thing that's great with college is so many people fear dorm life, but dorm life is the best.
It really is.
It's absolute chaos for guys anyway. That's how it was. And it's just, you meet so many people from different backgrounds, different places, different people, different incomes, whatever. And you're all living in the same place. And it's just, doors
is
are
it.
open. Hey, what's up? You're sitting down. I come back from a class. There's 5 people in my room. I'm like, what the hell are you doing here? We're playing
Who
your
are
video
you?
game.
So getting back, Amira says, as a college student in Boston, independence is a new world. You have the freedom to conquer everything and do what you please. Self-confidence and discipline is essential, in my opinion. Endless choices. Any tips for going into college or life after high school? How did you manage your social life while getting assignments from your professors?
Well, we could touch on that. That's pretty easy because remember, college, you're going to be spending less time in the
Yeah.
classroom in college than you do in high school. So you're going to have, let's say your schedule is, I have classes from 8 to 9. 10:30 to 11:30, and then 1 to 3.
And
right?
only on Monday,
Yeah.
Wednesday, and Friday.
Right. So now you're off half the morning and the entire afternoon. You might have no classes on Friday. So there's much more time to actually spend socializing. You find your groove. I would, go to my classes, come back, maybe take a nap or play video games, watch a movie, go to basketball practice in the afternoon, go to the gym, come back, hang out, play video games, or go out, depending on what night it was, depending on what my schedule was the next day. If you're living on campus, it's all at your fingertips. It's so easy.
It'll be time management. It'll be your biggest thing. Like
Right.
managing your time the best you can.
Of doing the work. But remember, you're going to have way less assignments as well. So when you get a college course, they might only have 5 assignments in the entire semester, which is 4 months, right? So you're going to have to figure out, like, here's your syllabus, here's all your assignments for the entire course.
And you're like, what can I do ahead of time? Because I know that there's this big party that I plan on going to.
Right.
And Halloween comes around.
Yeah. Halloween parties are the best in college, by the way.
Overall, though, I would like to say that going from school to college, getting my first job, having income coming in, looking forward, there were elements of concern. But at that time, I was just dealing with it. And it was like, oh, I need to get a job. And you ended up asking a bunch of people, you ended up getting a job. Then that job led to a better job. Then that job led to a better job. And then before you know it, you're working it out. You're starting to pay your bills. And it's kind of, what was I worried about in the first place? And I think that's what 99.9%, and I said that in the most pleasing way that I could.
Yeah.
I'm giggling because they're all over here crushing on his accent. And I'm reading all the comments.
That's my comment. I actually do.
It's not even his comment. He's an American guy.
I am now American as of last Monday. Listen.
No, but I want to touch on what you were just saying real quick,
Yeah.
and then hang on, because I can't see what the screen says. But we're all over the map.
They
All right.
said your accent could improve a little bit.
Yeah, I thought so.
No,
To New Jersey, I guess. Damn, I'm forgetting now what I was going to say. What were you just talking about? Okay. The whole idea of making that transition, money. Okay, that's the idea.
Yeah.
That in college, just assume you have nothing, right? And live with what you have. You'll figure it out, right? And it's
Isn't that crazy though?
but it is, look, in hindsight. But at the time,
You're freaking out.
right? I wasn't freaking out.
I didn't freak out either.
Because the thing is,
Kids are now.
I know, but that's the point. You have to understand that you have your whole life to freak out about money, right? But you only have a few years to really allow yourself to be a teenager, right? And that's why I keep trying to tell them even now, like, you're teenagers, allow yourself to be a teenager.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, enjoy that, because you can't be a teenager in your 20s and 30s. You can't be that person. No one's going to tolerate that when you're 35 and you go, you know what? I never really let myself go and just have fun. And you can't do it then. Like you'll never be able to kind of relive that youthful, figure it out kind of thing. Like, you have to capitalize on that moment. We all probably made the most of that time, but still look back and saying, I wish I did more. Right. And I was out all the time.
Yeah.
And I wish I did more.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, man, that Thursday, I wish I would have just gone out. Like, that fear of missing out kind of thing. I don't know why that's not a bigger thing when it comes to social, interactions, because I was like that before FOMO was even like a thing.
Oh, yeah.
It was not even a thing back then. There was no such thing as FOMO as far as like a term.
Yeah.
It was just like, that's just what we were. It was just living.
I'd be like, I have a paper, and then they'd be like, I'm going out, and I'd be like, I'll do the paper tomorrow.
Yeah, I
Go.
remember one time, it was great. There's this girl that I was like super close with, Margaret. I loved her. I still love her. And she was like my best friend. And she came over one time, and I'm like, I'm going to go out. I said, but I have this paper due tomorrow. Would you mind watching Braveheart and taking notes? And she's like, sure. And she sat there with a notebook, and I'm like, are you getting all this? And she's like, he's just breathing. I'm like, write that down. So I get back that night after going out, and it just says on the paper, he breathes, and there was nothing else written. And I'm like, all right, I got to wake up early tomorrow. But it's just, wasn't going to watch the damn movie. Like, that's why
I love her.
yeah, I love it. She's like, what is wrong with it? I'm not going to watch a 3-hour movie. I'm like, what's wrong? So it's just, and we would just laugh about it still. Like, I'm like, remember when I told you to watch Braveheart? All you wrote. And that's what it is, though. It's like, I have that story because I didn't stay home to write the damn paper. And I have that memory with my friend that I could text her right now and she'll laugh. Yeah. Because who cares? It was not that serious, right? Like, I got it done.
You'll get it done.
It works out.
Yeah.
Listen, This podcast is a part of Mellow. Mellow is just a name for a social emotional website and app that I've been putting together for some years. Alima and Dave have kindly joined me on this venture and trying to turn it into something more. My voice, albeit a bit loud just then, is all over the app. So meditations and all sorts, mindfulness techniques and relaxations and stuff that you can go and listen to and fall asleep to is in Mellow, MLLO .app, MLLO .app. So, you know, if you're feeling stressed out, you want to relax, there's so much more coming. We want this to be a nationwide thing, but right now it's growing. So, yeah, keep an eye on the app. Is there anything you want to say in closing?
I appreciate the students who came on today. It's much
40.
Yeah,
There's
it's much
40
more.
people.
It's much. That's great. I wish I could see the screen, but I love the fact that it's more fun. It's interactive. I love the questions. You know,
Yeah,
that's
this is
what it
this is you guys at home. You've all made the show
Yeah,
today,
that's what it's about.
and this has been absolutely amazing.
And hope you become more regular listeners. Tell your friends about it, and then you can even, you know, have this as be your social place for the week or whatever. You know, you can join us here and add ideas. Amira, you had your friend come on. That's great. You know, things like that. You know, it's not an exclusive club. You know,
Yeah, we
the more the merrier.
appreciate. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yeah,
we
thanks.
really do.
Thanks, Grape OJ.
Great, Coach. Terrific. Love the name.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah. Thanks so much.
Hope you got something. Hope you learned something. Hope you relaxed a little bit. And, you know, you have more
Thank
of an
you, Amir.
excitement as opposed to the fears of the next step. Be excited about it.
Yeah,
know,
that's
opportunities.
and don't be shy to ask those questions. There's really all of this started out because I was asked about 200 questions. Those were whittled down to about 160, and if you can think it, those questions were asked, and I have about 5,000 1-minute audio responses from people that have gone through all this stuff. So anyway, all that's coming on the app. Some of it, a bunch of it is already up there. Go check it out. And yeah,
Life can be great after high school. I feel like
Absolutely.
life can be great after high school.
Life-
Allow yourself to experience
Yeah.
all the things.
I would actually even argue that many students are having a really rough time in high school, but years from now, what's going to happen, they're going to look back with a bit of fondness because they're going to realize that for many of you, it made you who you were. And that's what often happens with some of the students that over the years I kind of maybe had a little bit of a headbutt with. They reached out years down the road and said, Jones, how you doing? So grateful, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And yeah, retrospect, it's always good. Anyway, thanks, Nicole. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much for watching.
All right, everybody.
See you in